In this video, you're going to learn how to conduct simple A/B tests on your landing page, your email, your website, and your advertisements. The reason you need this information is because A/B testing is very low in cost and has an extremely high reward. We're going to cover valuable material, and you'll want to watch till the end. But first, a little about myself. My name is Ed Preble. I've been doing internet marketing for over 25 years. I've built multiple million-dollar internet-based companies. I've earned a bachelor's degree in business and marketing, and another bachelor's degree in economics with a minor in computer science. I'm a former university professor of e-commerce, and I authored the textbook that I taught. It's my sincerest hope that I can show you how to achieve huge results in your internet business without having to go through all of the learning that I did, at least in a way without being having a bachelor's and all these things. If you like what you hear in this video and want to learn more, go to theinternetmarketershandbook.com. That's theinternetmarketershandbook.com, where you can get my book of 79 massively successful actions that lead to huge results in your internet business. It's a whopping $5.60 for the book, a 10-video training course, and a bunch of other goodies that go along with it. You also get a 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. If you aren't completely enthused by this book, I'll give you your $5.60 back. If you want it, great. If not, no problem. There's no pressure. One more thing before we get started. I've put together a free guide with 5 great ways to generate free traffic. Right there. It's absolutely free, and I'll send it to you with no obligation whatsoever. To get it, just type the word traffic in the comments below, and I'll make it available to you right away. Simple, right enough? Okay, so let's dive in. Conducting A/B tests on your landing page. If you want enormous results, and I said landing page, but really we do A/B testing on emails, landing pages, websites. We do it on well, here, let's just pull this little slide up here. We do it on landing pages, emails, advertisements, and websites. But if you want enormous results for your internet business, then you've got to conduct A/B testing because it has the potential to uncover valuable customer feedback. Performing just one A/B test a week will result in around 50 tests in a year. This is assuming you take a couple of weeks off somewhere in there. But it could produce 12 to 15 significant improvements for your business. As a non-technical marketer, you're probably thrilled that you were able to get your website launched. But now you gotta test it, and you gotta make sure that it's gonna work. Because I can tell you from experience that sometimes you put your best work out there, or what you think is your best work, only to find out that it's just you weren't your audience. You weren't, you weren't the person that you're marketing to, even though you might think that you are. So you got to test. So defining an experiment by identifying an advertisement, a landing page, a website, or email variable, and then creating multiple versions of it to test that variable will give you insight into which one will perform better. Splitting your traffic between the two versions allows you to gauge the response and switch to the version that performs better. The idea behind split testing is pretty simple. Rather than show a single ad or a landing page or a single website or a single email, use a single email in your marketing campaign, which may or may not do well, the idea is that you show different visitors, different audiences, different versions of each one, and watch the results, looking for the version that produces the best results. The version that performs the best is called the winner. Simple enough. and you would then use it to compare future versions against. In scientific terms, the winner version is what we refer to as the control version. So in this example right here, we'll see here, and there, in this example there, we would have an A version and a B version. The A version would be the version that we're using now. The B version would be some single variable that we're going to test. Now again, this can be your email, it can be your advertisement, it can be your landing page, and it can be your entire web page. But the idea is you only test one variable at a time, because if you test too many, then it gets out of hand and you can't really tell what's going on. So once you have a control version, you would typically make a single adjustment to that version and then send a small portion of your traffic to it to test it, while sending most of your traffic to your proven control version. Now there's some different variations on schools of thought here, but this method prevents you from sending a lot of potentially expensive traffic to a version with unknown results. Now the way I like to do it is, if you're starting out with an unknown version, and it's kind of a crapshoot either way. So what I do is I'll put a version out there. It doesn't matter what version it is. I'll put a version out there and I'll begin collecting statistics off of it. And then what I'll do is I'll put a second version out there, but I don't like to divide the traffic 50-50. I like to put 10 or 20% of the traffic over to the new version to find out if it's going to be better or worse. Because frankly, if it's going to be worse and you send 50% of your traffic, it could cost you quite a bit. Now some people, they prefer to go ahead and send 50% of the traffic. It's not my way, but it is a way. Okay, where are we here in our outline here? So you can test virtually anything in your marketing materials. Headlines, calls to actions, body copy, images, anything. If you can change it, it can be tested. But that doesn't mean you should necessarily spend months testing every little thing. Instead, focus on the things that are most likely to have a big impact. On your website, this likely includes the headline, your call to action, any graphic you use in direct correlation to your sales efforts, and the sales copy or product scripts. One of the interesting things is the buy button. The buy button, you can try colors, you can try verbiage, you can try shapes. There's a lot of testing that goes on buy buttons. In an email, it probably includes something similar. It would include your subject line. There is the very first line in the first sentence in your email, because oftentimes that's the thing that shows up in somebody's email reader, especially if it's on their telephone. In an ad, especially a text ad, like a search ad, you have fewer things to change, and so likely you'll test either the main headline or the offer itself. Now, there's an application. It's called ClickMagick, ClickMagick, and it makes it real easy to do split testing. I use it myself. And ClickMagick can even automatically end the split test once a statistically valid winner has been determined and divert all your traffic to the winner. I will try to put a link to ClickMagick in the comment section after I finish this video. But it can divert all of your traffic to the winner in order to maximize every click once the winner is found, and it'll find the winner for you. Let's see here. So let's switch to our next screen here, because I'm going to go over a whole bunch of items about exactly how you go about split testing. So let's start with what you do before you ever begin a split test. The first thing is you pick one variable to test. We've already talked about that a little bit, but let me dive in a little bit more detail. As you optimize your ads, your web pages, and your emails, you might find there are a number of variables you want to test. But to evaluate how effective a change is, you'll want to isolate one independent variable. and measure its performance. Otherwise, you can't be sure which one was responsible for changes in performance. You can test more than one variable for a single ad, a web page, or an email. Just be sure that you're testing them one at a time, if that makes sense. Look at the various elements in your marketing resources and their possible alternatives for design, wording, and layout. Other things you might test include email subject lines, we've already talked about that, sender names, that's a good one to test, and different ways to personalize your emails. Keep in mind that even simple changes like changing the image in your email or the words on your call to action button, like I talked about earlier, can drive big improvements. In fact, these sorts of changes are usually easier to measure than the bigger ones. Also note, there are some times when it makes more sense to test multiple variables rather than a single variable. I know I just said test only single variables. The process where you're testing multiple variables is called multivariate testing. This is usually performed when testing a completely different ad, a completely different landing page, and a completely different website look and feel. We're not going to go into the details here. Suffice it to say for this discussion, the best way to go is pop up a website, pop up an ad, pop up an email, and then begin making changes to it and go from there. So number 2 is identify your goal. Although you'll measure a number of traffic metrics for every test, choose a primary metric to focus on before you run the test. In fact, do it before you even set up the second variation. This is your dependent variable. Think about where you want this variable to be at the end of the split test. You might state an official hypothesis and examine your results based on this prediction. If you wait until afterward to think about which metrics are important to you, what your goals are, and how to change them, you might affect the user's behavior. Then you might not set up your test in the most effective way. Now, this gets a little bit esoteric, and I don't know that you need to go into hypothesizing so much what your goal is, as much as just make sure that you test one item, and you can create a hypothesis and say, this is what I hope to accomplish, but then see if it's gonna work. Now you want to create, as number 3, create a control and a challenger. So this is so right here we've got the control, and the variation is called the challenger. You now have your independent variable, your dependent variable, and your desired outcome. Use this information to set up the unaltered version of whatever you're testing as your control. If you're testing a web page, this is the unaltered web page as it already exists. If you're testing a landing page, this would be the landing page design and copy you would normally use. From there, build a variation or a challenger. The ad, the website, the landing page, or the email you'll test against your control. For example, if you're wondering whether including a testimonial on a landing page would make a difference, set up your control page with no testimonial, then and measure the results of that, then create your variation with the testimonial. Number 4, split test your sample groups equally and randomly. For tests where you have more control over the audience, like with emails, you need to test with 2 or more audiences that are equal in order to have conclusive results. How you do this will vary depending on the A/B testing tool you use. I'll talk a little bit more about other A/B testing tools, but if you're using ClickMagick, if you're a customer of ClickMagick, then conducting an A/B test on an email, for example, ClickMagick will automatically split the traffic to your variations so that each variation gets a random sampling of visitors. There's other platforms, and I'm going to mention those here in a few minutes. Number 5, determine your sample size if it's applicable. How you determine your sample size will also vary depending on your A/B testing tool, as well as the type of A/B test that you're running. If you're A/B testing an email, you'll probably want to send an A/B test to a smaller portion of your list to get statistically significant results. Eventually, you'll pick a winner and send the winning variation on to the rest of the list. If you're testing something that doesn't have a finite audience, like a web page, then how long you keep your test running will directly affect your sample size. You'll need to let your test run long enough to obtain a substantial number of views. Otherwise, it'll be hard to tell whether there was a statistically significant difference between the two variations. Now, try not to let the math and a lot of the things that seem complicated that I'm talking about get by you over your head. You don't have to worry about all this stuff. It's actually pretty simple. You run traffic. You have two items of the same thing with one little change. You run traffic to both of them, not 50-50, but a small portion of the traffic, and then you take the measurements of the results for the new one. If it's better than the old one, then you go with the new one. It's pretty simple. The higher the percentage of your confidence level, though, the more sure you can be about your results. If you've got a background in statistics or statistical measurement, it helps, but it's not at all necessary. In most cases, you'll want a confidence level of 95% minimum. This is also known as a margin of error, in this case of 5%. Preferably, you want your margin of error to be less than 2%. So you want your confidence level to be 98%, especially if it was a time-intensive experiment to set up. However, sometimes it makes sense to use a lower confidence rate if you don't need the test to be stringent. Again, don't let this stop you. Don't let this create a barrier for you to do A/B testing. You don't necessarily have to have these high confidence rates. It just makes it a little bit more accurate. Make sure you're, number 7, let's see here, we're still on the same screen. Make sure you're only running one test at a time on any campaign. Now I keep coming back to the same concept, changing one thing, running one test. I've made this mistake myself. I've changed multiple items and ran multiple tests, only to try to look at it afterwards and say, what the heck does this mean? And I had to retest. Testing more than one thing for a single campaign, even if it's not on the same exact asset, can complicate your results dramatically. For example, here's an example, and I've done this very thing. If you A/B test an email campaign that directs to a landing page at the same time that you're A/B testing the landing page, how can you know which change caused the increase in leads? It seems basic enough, and sometimes you just want to go out and test stuff, and that's what I did, and I learned the hard way. I'm hoping that you won't learn the hard way, but you'll take this as a lesson. All right, so now we're going to go over here, and look at that. Now, during the A/B testing, what do you do during your A/B testing? You got everything all set up, you're ready to go, and you've started. Well, first off, I suggest using an A/B testing tool. I've given you ClickMagick as one, but I want to give you 8 other good ones. Google Analytics and Google Optimize. These are both free options for almost all of your A/B testing needs. Now, the drawback to these two are that they're a little on the complicated side to use. It's a bit of a learning curve to be able to use them. But they'll test everything, and they'll give you absolutely every bit of information that you ever need for A/B testing. And then the others that I've listed in here are just options that you can consider. Optimizely, it's an affordable, simple, powerful set of A/B and CRO tools. VWO, Adobe Target, Evergage, A/B Tasty, Lead-Formally, and Unbounce. All right, let's do this. There we go. Okay. So still, we're still during the A/B testing. Test both variations simultaneously. Now, this can be counterintuitive based on what I've been saying before, so let me explain. Timing plays a significant role in your marketing campaign's results, whether it's time of day, day of the week, or month of the year. If you were to run version A during 1 month and version B a month later, how would you know whether the performance change was caused by the different design or the different month? So when you run A/B tests, you're still going to run only one change, but you'll need to run the two variations at the same time. So your control and your challenger, you run them at the same time. Otherwise, you may be left second guessing your results. So you wouldn't, for example, run your control in January and then run your test or challenger in the next month. You want to run them both at the same time. The only exception here is if you're testing timing itself, like finding the optimal time for sending out emails. This is a great thing to test because depending on what your business offers and who your subscribers are, the optimal time for subscriber engagement can vary significantly by industry and target market. Number 10, give the A/B test enough time to produce useful data. This is important. Statistics are a funny thing. You can think that you have all of the information in the first 5 minutes, in the first 5 hours, in the first 5 days. Depending on the test that you're doing, give it as long as you possibly can. Eventually, it'll demonstrate for yourself that it's consistent. You'll want to make sure that you let the test run long enough in order to obtain a substantial sample size. That's the key here. Otherwise, it'll be hard to tell whether there was a statistically significant difference between the two variations. How long is long enough? Depending on your company and how you execute the A/B test, getting statistically significant results could happen in hours, days, weeks, or even months. A big part of how long it takes to get statistically significant results is how much traffic you get. So if your business doesn't get a lot of traffic to your website, it might take much longer for you to run the A/B test. In theory, it shouldn't restrict the time in which you're gathering results. Number 11, ask for feedback from real users. This is an important one, often overlooked. A/B testing has a lot to do with quantitative data, but that won't necessarily help you understand why people take certain actions over others. While you're running your A/B test, why not collect qualitative feedback from real users? One of the best ways to ask people for their opinion is through a survey poll. You might add an existing survey on your site that asks visitors why they didn't click on certain CTA call to actions, or one on your thank you page that asks visitors why they clicked a button or filled out a form. You might find, for example, that a lot of people clicked on a call to action leading them to an ebook. Hey, well, I'm thinking about it. Call to action leading to an ebook. Let's go back to here. Don't forget, you can get 79 of tips just like this in detail from the Internet Marketer's Handbook. You can see right up there. That's the Internet Marketer's Handbook. There's a copy of the book. It's $5.60. All kinds of wonderful things in there. Go right there now, or right after this video, and pick it up. Also, type in free in the comment section, and you'll get 5 ways to generate free traffic. These are awesome methods, by the way. All right, so you might find, for example, that a lot of people clicked on a call to action leading them to an ebook, but once they saw the price, they didn't convert. That kind of information will give you a lot of insight into why your users are behaving in certain ways. All right, let's take a look at after you do your A/B test. Let's come back to here. Oh, where were we here? We were on this one. And then, yeah, okay. So So after your A/B test, you want to focus on your goal metric. Again, although you'll be measuring multiple metrics, keep your focus on that primary goal metric that you do your analysis on. For example, if you tested 2 variations of an email and chose leads as your primary metric, don't get caught up on open rate or click-through rate. You might see a high click-through rate and poor conversion rates, in which case you might end up choosing the variation that had a lower click-through rate in the end. I hope that makes sense. Let me say that again. Your goal in A/B testing is to test a particular item. You may discover something else in your A/B testing, but the thing that you're trying to do is test for a particular item. And you want to keep your focus on that particular item, that thing that you're testing in terms of your analysis. For example, if you're testing 2 variations of an email and you want to see how good of a response rate you get on a particular subject matter, well, you try 2 different emails with 2 different subject matters as your primary metric to measure. You don't want to get caught up in the open rate or the click-through rate. Well, in this case, you would want to get caught up in the click-through rate. You wouldn't want to get caught up in the open rate because what you're trying to measure perhaps is the click-through rate, or maybe it's the open rate that you're trying to measure with you're probably trying to measure your open rate with your subject line, not necessarily the click-through rate. So if you get caught up in the click-through rate when you're trying to measure the open rate, you might see a high click-through rate and poor conversions, in which case you might end up choosing the variation that had the lower open rate. All right, so hopefully I didn't just complicate that a little bit more, but the idea is measure one thing, stick with the one thing, and then measure another thing. Let's see here. Measure the significance of your results using A/B testing calculator. Now that you've determined which variation performs the best, it's time to determine whether or not your results are statistically significant. In other words, are they enough to justify the change? You can download, you can search for statistical calculators. Frankly, I don't do it. I probably should, but I don't. I haven't found that it's that critical. But if you really want to go first class all the way, that's what you would do. Number 14, take action based on your results. If one variation is statistically better than the other, you have a winner. Complete your test by disabling the losing variation in your A/B testing pool. If neither variation is statistically better, you've just learned that the variable you tested didn't impact results, and you have to mark the test as inconclusive. In the case where this happens, you want to stick with the original variation or run another test. You can use the failed data to help you figure out a new iteration of your new test. While A/B tests help you impact results on a case-by-case basis, you can also apply the lessons you learn from each test and apply it to future efforts. For example, if you have a second product, then you can apply it to that. If you've conducted A/B tests in your email marketing and have repeatedly found that using numbers in email subject lines generate better click-through rates, you might want to consider using that tactic in more of your emails. Number 15, and finally here, plan your next A/B test. The A/B test you just finished may have helped you discover a new way to make your marketing content more effective. But don't stop there. There's always more room for more optimization. You can even try conducting an A/B test on another feature of the same web page or email or ad you just did a test on. For example, if you just tested a headline on a landing page, why not do a new test on the body copy? or color scheme or images. Always keep an eye out for opportunities to increase conversion rates and leads. Now, again, I want to remind you that you should always be A/B testing. Always be A/B testing. A/B testing is the difference between making a ton of money in this business and making just a little bit of money. I learned early on that if I just toss a site up there or a landing page up there, that I may or may not have success. And there were times when I would throw a landing page up there thinking, oh, this is going to be it, and then nobody came to it. And I was all bummed out because I couldn't figure out why until I started A/B testing. Then I started discovering that little tweaks, sometimes it's just the simplest little tweak, made huge differences in the success ratio of these tests. Again, I'd like to remind you, my name is Ed Preble. I give away a lot of information as much as I possibly can. If you like what you hear in this video and other videos and you want to learn more, go to the internetmarketershandbook.com, where you can get my book of 79 massively successful actions that lead to a huge result in your internet business. It's $5.60. It's going to come with the book, a 10-video training course, and a bunch of other goodies along with a 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. If you want it, great. If not, no problem. There's no obligation. Also, type traffic in the comments below, and I'll send you the 5 great ways to generate free traffic. It's absolutely free, no obligation. And on that note, we're going to sign off. I would like to encourage you to have a great day and be very successful in your internet marketing. Goodbye.